Hello, everybody. This is Aaron Christensen of Horror 101 with Dr. AC, and this is Scare-A-Thon 2022. We are well into the thick of it at this point. Scare-A-Thon 2022 is benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. And tonight we're going to be talking about Censor from 2021. And joining me once again from Brussels will be my Belgian blood brother, Gert Verbeeck. And I'll bring him into the studio. Hey, there he is.
Hello, Aaron. Thank you for having me again.
Welcome back. Cool. I'm excited to talk about this movie because you had actually recommended this to me early on because you had seen it. Tell me where you saw it.
I saw it at the premiere screening here in Brussels at Cinema Nova during the Off-Screen Film Festival in 2021.
Excellent. And I'm curious to hear what your first impressions of it were.
Favorable.
Mine as well.
Yeah. A fresh, unique, new impression on an original theme also that flirts with, documenting a certain era and mixing it with the whole fictional narrative. So that was impressive. Well done.
Yeah. And I mean, just kind of so if people aren't familiar with the film, we'll do a little synopses, but we have Enid, who is played by, I'm going to try do my best with this name, Niamh Algar. And she is a film censor in the early 1980s in the UK. And so she is assigned by the BFCC, the British Film Censors, I've forgotten the acronym, but they're the ones who were in charge of the video nasties in the early 80s, where they had to cut bits and pass the films or not or reject them.
Is it the BBFC, like British Board of Film Censorship?
That's what it is. It's the British. Wait, what is it? British Board? No, I thought it was BFCs. Anyway, doesn't matter. That's what Google's for. But anyway, so she and her compatriots at the BFCC are in the midst of the video nasties and they're shutting films down. But she's also dealing with her own private crisis in that she has a sister who disappeared when she was young, and that has consistently haunted her. And her parents bring her a certificate of death saying that they are basically giving up on her, saying that they don't think she's going to be found alive. And that's something that really caused a lot of pain for Enid because she's been holding out hope that her sister will someday reemerge. And from there, the things start to get deeper and darker. So that's kind of our synopses. And let's go ahead and jump in. I really dug this film. I thought it was a fun kind of examination of, like you said, it is a not very delightful time in history, especially for the UK folks. Because you could be put in jail for owning a videotape if it was one that they had deemed inappropriate for public consumption. And just that kind of it was the White House, I forget, Mary Whitehouse, who was in charge of just leading leading the charge to basically just shut down anybody watching horror films. And there's a whole wonderful documentary that I'll pull up in a second about that whole era. But anyway, so this kind of takes a glimpse at that era and the role of a censor within it. But again, then it riffs off into more of a personal story.
To pick up on what you said about the era of video nasties, I like the fact how they incorporated it in the film. Because, I mean, it's almost mixing little bits of documentary within the whole fictional narrative. And they kind of play with it because we do get to see some clips of really real existing films. And then they throw in some titles that are fictional. So it's kind of a fun little touch there of the filmmaker. What I also think about the narrative, the character, it's a little bit, it touches this topic of life imitating fiction and fiction imitating life, which will lead to a descent into madness, essentially for the protagonist. But it also makes a point about that era, about the whole discussion is like, do these films influence people to do bad things, or whomever might do something bad,
Right.
did they have troubles or traumatic issues to start with already?
Right.
And the films don't play a role. So that was good balance.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, and that is the question that has always come up regarding the video nasties is, like, are these films inspiring the violence, or would the violence have occurred regardless? And that's something that comes up later in the film, is that there is a crime that's occurred, and it comes out that the murderer had seen, I think he kills his family, and he had seen this certain film.
I'll tell you, because I remember that narrative part. He had killed a person,
right,
in a similar way, like a scene from this one video nasty film,
right.
And you have to wait a little bit. Later on, he gets interviewed also. I mean, it comes out that he stated that
he'd never actually seen it.
So
yeah.
And he did it in a burst of temporary memory loss.
Right. They call him the amnesia killer.
Yeah. So it's good, and the film does a lot of these little setups that you question, like, wait, did I just see that, or is that true, or is it in her head or not? But later on, you always get a little payoff that explains it. Like, you have to pay attention; it's subtle, but you get your answers. So it's well constructed in that way.
And the director, Prano Bailey-Bond, she co-wrote the script with Anthony Fletcher. This is her first feature film, and I think it's a very accomplished feature film. I'm going to bring the poster up really quick, just so we can take a look at it, because what you were pointing out is that there is this, and we see this in the film, that there's a split between when she's in the real world and when she's in kind of a fantasy. And you get this kind of like VHS quality to it.
Yes.
And she has these moments of where she's basically going into a fantasy world. And I love, I mean, what the director does with those primary colors. I mean, it's kind of cliche to call it Bava-esque, but like those bold primary colors that give you an indication that we are not necessarily in the real world, that we are in an altered reality.
And in the beginning, it's not really clear when it's happening.
Right.
It gets more proficient, more
pronounced.
Yeah, obvious near the end of the film. But there's a great in the third act somewhere, right before the climax and during the climax, there is this change of aspect ratio. It goes from CinemaScope to widescreen and 4:3 TV format. But the thing is, it's so slow.
Yeah,
you don't notice it until you're already 2 minutes further in the film. It's like, wait, when did that change?
Right,
and when
right.
you forward, you see it like.
Yeah, I didn't notice that, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's a different aspect ratio now."
Yes, and that's when you enter either her mindset, or also when you enter what's supposed to be the actual film footage that she ends up starring in. So that's a clever approach.
Yeah, and Niamh Algar, our lead actress, I was looking her up, and she's mostly done a lot of British TV, but this seems to be kind of like her major film starring role, like her debut as far as the star of the film. And she's terrific. She plays a really great, kind of like a button-down type, but you start to see the lid come off the kettle, as things are percolating underneath.
It's a fertile role for any actor or actress, I think, to play this arc into quite a bit of misery in the end and madness.
Yeah.
What I also liked is like between the characters, the dialogues that they have, they are quite exquisite in terms of what they talk about. For instance, when she's talking to her fellow colleagues,
yes,
how they discuss the video nasties, it's really spot on. And then one of the early scenes has her talking, like a dialogue scene in the restaurant with her parents. And it's so subtle, but what they say is reveals a lot about their emotional and background. For instance, when you said that her parents confront her with the death, signing the death certificate for her sister by, death in absentia.
Yeah.
She really, you see on her face, she doesn't agree at all. And the parents just kind of want to ignore it. And like, what shall we have now? I heard the fish is good in this restaurant. And in that sense, especially in it, but also the parents, to me, it came across like both of them are in denial, and they are very rigorous in their approach to things, and it causes gradually for Enid a lot of troubles.
Yeah, yeah. Michael Smiley is another actor who might be familiar to genre fans. Michael plays this kind of like oily producer who flirts with Enid at the BFCC office. Michael Smiley, people might know from Kill List. Ben Wheatley likes to use him a lot. So Kill List, Free Fire, A Field in England. So he's terrific in this. I've always enjoyed. He's got like 100 TV and film credits at this point. So he's been around the block a few times, and he brings that sense of just comfort and accessibility. And again, he has this just kind of like lovely, slimy producer character.
Yeah, in the UK version of it, he sounds a bit more eloquent, but I mean, he's as sleazy as they come, I guess. So,
yeah.
And I agree. Like his role and Enid's Niamh's role are the two ones that really stand out in the film.
Mm-hmm.
To great results.
Yeah, agreed. And it is. I mean, there's a fair amount of gore. There's a lot of psychological, stuff going on. But what's funny is, like, as you point out, the gore that we see is sometimes in the films, that she is viewing and reviewing for pass or fail. And we see some kind of like fun schlocky stuff, but then we see some more realistic stuff when we follow her narrative.
Yeah. Well, it kind of, I mean, in sync with her descent into madness, the gore becomes a bit also surreal and abstract near the end, which was a great touch also.
I do want to throw up the
body horror even. I mean, kind of.
Yeah. I want to throw up the spoilers banner really quick, just because I want to talk about, there's a moment toward the end. The very end where she comes back to her parents' house and, like there's this happy reunion because she's found her sister and, they're going to have the family reunion here. And you see that kind of like shudder in the camera where you see the glimpse behind what's actually happening. And I thought that was so effective. Like, that's the thing that's going to stay with me from this film is, like the parents looking on in horror and this woman that she's kidnapped that she thinks is her sister. And, like she's going, oh my God, what is happening? And to watch her kind of like force the lid back on and be like, no, this fantasy is real. This is what I want to believe.
Yes, that is absolutely how it plays out. And aside from the visual trickery, which is very well done, bursting the bubble, the cracks there, it does not miss its emotional impact.
Yeah,
I felt it. It's like this is heavy. This is sad. This is
right. And the pain that she's encountering, when she realizes this woman is not her sister, and she's like, but that can't. Yeah, she has that moment where she's lying on the ground, saying, "Please be her, please be her, please be her," and it's like, oh man, it's agonizing. And I just thought it just stuck the landing so well, and I feel like that's really what kind of anchored the film for me.
And also about the ending, with the visuals that you just described, coming home to her parents, it gets foreshadowed in a subtle, great way in the video store. When she enters, you gotta check out what, before she asked about the video nasties, she's holding another video that she likes. And at the end, you know why. It's wonderful.
I'll take the banners down again. So yeah, it sounds like we were both pretty big fans of the film. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what our director, Prano Bailey-Bond, has in store, and also Niamh Algar. I would like to think she will enjoy a healthy film career moving forward. I always like to see, and this film played pretty widely. I know it had a Sundance screening. You said it played over at Off Screen, so hopefully the word's getting out about it.
Yes, the thing is, it's like it's a special film, quite unique. It's not for all audiences. Sure. It's a bit offbeat, but it's so well accomplished. And I mean, you have to like this kind of cinema that flirts a bit. I mean, for lack of a better description, it gets quite meta near the end.
Yeah. Oh, sure. No, yeah, absolutely.
And if it's done well, it's great. And this is a prime example of how it works and can play out in a film that leaves an impression.
And kind of what I was alluding to earlier, it's almost educational in some way. I mean, certainly horror fans who are aware of the video nasties, it's gonna resonate more with them. But there may be younger horror fans out there who just never knew that period even existed. And there's a great documentary by Jake West called Video Nasties: Moral Panic, Censorship, and Videotape. It's released by Severin. And I highly recommend it because it does go into that whole, kind of satanic panic and everything that surrounded the video nasties era. And it's just kind of a shameful era that, and one of the talking heads in that film talks about how it isn't even important for them. They've moved on. Like the fact that these films have all been passed and they're out in the public not domain, but out for public consumption now. He's like, all the people who went to jail, all the people who had to pay these excessive fines, they're the ones who got hurt. And the politicians who instituted these policies, they just moved on because they weren't worried about the future. They weren't worried about the past. They were worried about just living in the moment and making their name. And like I say, it's an era, kind of like those who choose to forget the past are doomed to repeat it. Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, this is an important chapter to be aware of.
And that's what I like about Censor also, that it throws in a bit of info about that era, kind of like it educates, it documents just enough to know, like, look, to make a point and a statement, like, this was kind of wrong.
This really happened. Yeah.
It's well thought out, the whole film, for sure.
Yeah.
It knows what it's doing.
Well, that's just it. It feels very intelligent. It feels intelligent, mindful. It's respectful to its viewers. I don't think it spoon feeds. It just basically kind of like says, this is the setting. This is when these events happened. And then it takes that, in another direction with its personal narrative. But I haven't seen a lot of films deal with this video nasties topic in the past.
That's what I meant with when essentially the main narrative, of the protagonist, the main character, is again a descent into madness, but the contextual setting is unique. It's never been put into that context before until Censor came along.
Agreed. Cool. Well, again, we're both giving Censor a big thumbs up from here, and you and I will be back to talk about more things for Scare-A-Thon. So stay tuned, everybody. Again, this is Scare-A-Thon 2022, benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. The link to contribute to the fundraiser is below in the description. And we look forward to seeing you back here very soon. Thank you, Gert. Have a good one.
Thank you. I'm looking forward.